Okay, I'm here today again in part two with Michelle MacDonald, and we're talking about her book available on Amazon.com. And it's Sandra Grazzini-Rucki and the World's Last Custody Trial. It's available on Kindle. If you have a Kindle subscription, you can download it for free. That's no cost from Amazon.com. There's a paperback edition. And look her up, Michelle MacDonald, look her up online as an author with Amazon.com and find all of her books, as well as, The Girls Are Gone is another book related to this trial. Michelle, can you tell us a little bit more about your book and the research behind it, and how on earth could two people be hidden on a horse farm for 2 years without any discovery? What's going on here? How can people just disappear?
Right,
Children.
right. So the saga is ongoing. It's kind of interesting because when I finished the book, I had to stop somewhere. It was still, the saga was ongoing, and it's ongoing to this day, really. It's because it is a true story, and I call it a true family court crime story, where a mother who had lived in a home for 14 years with her 5 children, raising them, had a job with the airlines, was in one day, 2 hours, was court ordered to leave her home, have no contact with her children. And it was both parents that could have no contact with their children, even through third parties, and have somebody else move into her home and be their guardian. So this type of order was absurd to me. Now, I was not her attorney at the time of this order, by the way. I met Sandra so this order happened September 7th, 2012. I did not meet Sandra until January 1, 2013. She came to one of my Family Innocence events. Now, Family Innocence is a nonprofit that's dedicated to keeping families out of court, resolving conflicts and injustices peacefully. And it was established with a calling that I had based on another case, the Benedictus Ombuna case, a father who tragically lost his son with a court order when his wife and the son's mother was deceased. So how could that happen in family court, right? And with no service of process or anything else. So I had some success with that situation, and that prompted me to want to abolish court for families altogether. And that was, 2011. So it wasn't that long after that Sandra came to one of our events. And one of Family Innocence's mottos, if you will, we had our first meeting on March 1st, 2011. And we have had events every first of the month until our mission is complete. And that's to abolish court for families. And that was the calling I had. It wasn't just to eliminate court for families, it was to do it in 1 year. And so that, otherwise I would have procrastinated. So our Family Innocence did develop a process within 1 year where court's unnecessary. But Sandra came to one of our events. And so she just walked in. She was with an attorney that I knew. his name was, oh, I'm forgetting his name right now, who brought her to this event. He had sent another woman to me who to help, and we were we were having an event. It was at a Carboni's Pizza. We had music, and she walked in very frightened and afraid. I didn't know who she was. And she said, "Why are you having your event here?" I'm like, "Because we're having it here. Do you know my case? You know, Grazzini-Rucki, just like you. I had never heard of it." And she goes, "Well, you practice in Dakota Kona. You must know my case. Don't know her case." And that's the case with everyone when they're infected by the family court. They think they're the only ones that are going through this. And I when Sandra told me of her order, "Oh, you don't believe me?" I said, "I believe you," because I had seen it happen to Benedictus Ambuna, where in one full swoop he didn't have his children. But I had never seen a case, but I've seen them since, where they actually, instead of giving custody to the state, like taking away, they actually take the parent away and leave the kids there for somebody to take care of. Do you see what I'm saying? Like it got so bad that they're not taking the children away from you. They're taking you away from your children in an instant and having somebody come in, a guardian come in and take care of your children, an outsider, somebody that's not even a party to the litigation. Does that sound crazy to you? Have you heard that of that happening?
Yeah, so you're saying this is kind of an industry. It's a money, well, I mean, we don't want to ascribe motivations that involve money, but there are a lot of folks in Minnesota who pretend to be going about the Lord's business or Walls's business or the government's business. And yeah, I'm here from the government. I'm here to help, right? And so they're swooping down, helicoptering in to situations, and they're going to right every wrong. And we have, I call them inside the Minnesota State Department of Health and Human Services, I like to call them Helgas and Hildegards, because they present themselves as these socialists in gray pantsuits, and they all sort of look like Angela Merkel. I mean, I don't want to make light of other people's sufferings, but social workers are some of the most antisocial human beings I know. And I don't know if I'm onto something here. I have strong intuitions. All I have is intuitions, and I really don't know any of the facts of this case. I have not read the book. I haven't looked at the original source material and the court documents. So I am literally making this up as I go along. It's completely extemporaneous, but I have been in contact with, I tried hosting 2 social workers once, a person from the Twin Cities and her mother as well, who were traveling, and I helped them out in a jam. And I ended up learning so much about these 2 from the Twin Cities who were really angry, frustrated persons, and neither of these individuals should be anywhere near children, much less trying to help other human beings. I was astonished at how maybe they're scraping the bottom of the barrel, because after all, women with a maternal instinct are going to be pair bonded with men and raising families. Whereas those who want to safeguard other people's children and have control over children, perhaps to compensate for their deficits as mothers or their inability to pair bond and actually raise their own family, they want to try to mother other people's children. And that is a psychologically dangerous place for ladies to be. It's sort of like that book Misery. I'm your greatest fan, you know, let me keep you here forever. Let me gets you into the basement, and it puts the lotion on its skin, or it gets the hose again. Once you get into family court, you sort of never get out. Once you get your children in that cycle of I don't know, in that cycle of codependency with a woman who really should just go adopt a cat or dog from the local pound, go. I'm sort of frightened of the persons who I've met who are supposed to be social workers, control freaks, I would call them, and busybodies with other. Am I making any sense here, or should we start this over again?
No, what I want to say is that's your story and you're sticking to it. And generally, you're correct. The system is backwards, and I've and she's elderly now. She said, I used to be a social worker, and that's when we'd be helping people to reunite, right? There wasn't a deadline. We'd be driving them to their appointments, making sure they get there and see their children, making sure the children see them, and that isn't the case anymore. It's backwards. They're trying to find something on you that they're right to having taken the child away from you in the first place. It's part of the cover-up. It really is. I have a case right now where I'm astonished at what has occurred.
Maybe we shouldn't. I'm not an attorney, but maybe we shouldn't delve into any intricacies of some ongoing. Even in a precursor. What's the word for it? In a cursory sense, because we're treading light if we start talking about individuals and their situations. I have a great deal of
I'm going to tell you, that's the difference with me.
The
difference with me and other attorneys is my clients, generally speaking, want to get the word out there. I've had great clients that are like, you know what? Please tell everybody that in fact, coming on this show, the one client I was about to talk about, she's going, can you talk about my case on the show? So I've been very trusting of my clients in that respect. And that's another part of the cover up. Oh, you're breaching attorney-client privilege. Well, if your clients are good with it, why would the state come on you, or those kinds of things? But that's okay. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Most of these judges in their purest form are to find facts. They're supposed to discern disputed facts, like in family court, I guess, if you because that's our culture right now. Discern disputed facts, apply those facts to the law, those conclusions of law, and then relevant law, and then make an order. And in family court, that's all over the place. It can be all over the place. It's a lawless place. And as an attorney, people used to say, oh, it's so lawless. And I'd be like, no, we have laws. Well, it's lawless because there's so many laws, that phone book of laws, and the attorneys can have their story, like we talked about, that's your story and you're sticking to it, their narrative.
I think you're saying that
you go back and forth. The judges started to, and this is important, what judges started to do is they'd schedule it. First of all, 99% of these cases are settled. So that's not, I was probably, when I would have 1, 2, 5, 6 trials a year, it was amazing. No attorneys in family court ever had that many contested trials, that many this, because I was actually doing my job. But 99% of the cases are settled. And that means that these officers of the court are not doing their job, because the judges are just signing things that people are agreeing to that are contrary to law. So if you're agreeing to an injunction or a regulation of your family, the judges are signing it, you know, it's like, yeah, I'm agreeing to it. And so
So you're
how can
saying
you,
that
I started to have these people saying, well, I don't like the order. And I used to say, well, you made your bed, you slept in it. And then I started to see, wait a minute, you know, they signed something. They had a mediated agreement that said this, but then when it got converted to a court order, it was like all kinds of additions were made. And when I started to be really, you know, scrutinize that, that's when, you know, my role as an officer of the court became, I got illuminated, because I have a glass ceiling. I have, as an officer of the court, the court wants us to settle. So if there's a way to do it, you can. And courts are not doing their jobs. They're administrative courts, not constitutional courts.
well, so are the motivations of the two parties entirely pure? Because some people may have you know, an incredibly legitimate reason for trying to get away from a spouse or a situation. In this case that the book is about, there were allegations that the father was incredibly abusive. I thought I read that, and I thought I read that right. But is there, I mean, is there any credibility to that? Or what, is it another one of those hashtag Me Too accusations? But I don't mean to make light of it at all, and I don't know anything about it, frankly. But was there a
There
some legitimate
was
reason
and
for?
there wasn't. I mean, when this order came down, it and Sandra met me and told me of this order. I don't take cases lightly. She didn't have any of her materials. Her attorney, who was paid a flat fee of $80,000, had just abandoned her, basically. I mean, imagine that, $80,000 flat fee. She had paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to attorneys for this great order that she got, right? Or that the attorneys got for her. And so I went down to the courthouse and researched her case before I took it, and I counted 3,400 orders up until that point. And I realized that she had already been divorced. She had a divorce order that had, for the first time that I had seen, been reopened. And the other attorney had been claiming that it was a fraudulent order, that even though it was signed by both parties, and it was a very simple order, right? A simple divorce that you see all the time, that he didn't know what he was signing. So it got reopened in that sense. And by the time I got the case, all the property matters were settled, and there was going to be a custody trial coming up. And there was a custody, there had been a signed custody order. Again, and I know how this can happen when you reopen a divorce. Like if you want to reopen a divorce, the divorce still stays there. Your marriage is still terminated, but all these other things can be reopened and be looked at. So I had a couple of cases where certain portions of cases could be reopened. So that didn't surprise me that could happen. But what surprised me was the extent that of the court involvement with these 3,400 orders by the time I got the case. And the one order that kind of put a kibosh on.
Yeah. I mean, that's like 3,400, 3,400 orders, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's You know, I don't think I have that many pieces of paper in my house. And I wonder each order, how many pages each order might have been, but 3,400 is an incredible amount of attention to be paid to telling someone what to do. And that involves someone's time and money and resources, probably an office staff, many stamps, certainly a lot of postage stamps. And that's, there ought to be a way of resolving these things one way or the other in somebody's favor, and certainly the children. But to, this is madness. Were these persons completely sapped of their financial resources by the end of their experience with the family court? Were they completely broke? Or
not
I mean,
not the father, but the mother was who was completely had no funds by the time that I met her. Yes, it's financially breaking, and what you just said is true. It's if you look at it superficially, there were maybe 30 orders, because again, a divorce order is just one order, right? So this is what I do with family innocence. We only go to court for the orders that we need. And you need, in our culture, a termination of marriage order. That's just one order. So but what happens is that there's many orders. And not only do you have a custody order, and in past times, in the 50s, 40s, they just say joint custody. And you just, they used to say, like, custody and father on the weekends, custody and mother during the weekday, and they just live their lives. Even when I first started practicing, people would just set aside their orders and just live their lives, right? Okay, we're, let's let bygones be bygones, and not have to enforce every single aspect of it, because they were just living in what they went back to what I'm calling family innocence. Okay, a certain amount's going to be paid. We're going to handle our kids the way we would normally do, and those and resume kind of a more healthy relationship.
Well, that's entirely possible when, I guess, a mother and father of a family are trying to divorce and just simply get away from each other. That in itself is the pressure drop perhaps required to make life more possible for the children to flourish. Because after all, you really want the well-being of the children. I mean, to heck with the dad and to heck with the father. The mother, I'm reminded of the two mothers who went before King Solomon's court, and each one was fighting over a baby, and they said, "This is my baby. No, this is my baby." And then they're arguing with King Solomon, and he said, "Okay, I'll just cut the kid in half, and you can each take half and go home." And of course, the real mother said, "Oh yeah, okay, she can have the kid. She can have the kid." And so the one who walked away is the one who's concerned about the child's well-being. In this case, it seems like, I mean, in what we're talking about today, not specific to Sandra Grazzini-Rucki, sorry. It seems that the one who doesn't want to let the kid exist or live its own existence or go on with his or her happiness as a child and flourish is actually the state. And I'm wondering if statism isn't the real component. The state wants to be a spouse to children as much as the mother and father do, because this endless litigation, endless paperwork, the money spent, the money they collect, the power becomes in and of itself a driving motivation and force for continuing to issue 3,400 orders in one specific case. What is going on? There isn't a building large enough in St. Paul to house all of this data, right? All of this incredible paperwork. And who as a career social worker, which Helga or Hildegard would care enough to stay like up and abreast on each individual case to read all of these 3,400 orders? It's maddening. I wish the very best to these children. The children are the ones who suffer, and I hope these kids find a way to make it in the world and overcome this incredible shame that the state pushes on their heads to make them feel like they've been a party to some, and again, I don't know the specifics, but to make children feel ashamed at a young age carries on into adulthood. And, you know, just leave children alone, right?
It was Sandra Grazzini-Rucki's case, and we can get to why I call it the last custody trial. But when she first got involved with the abuses of the family court, she was just home one day, and she was very involved in the children's schooling, and they went to different schools. And one of her supporters there at the time called her up and said, your children are, there's some lady that came to the school and your children are just crying. And like Mother Bear, she just went down there, and she didn't, she's so innocent because she didn't really know what she was dealing with, but she said, you get away from my children and you just leave them alone. And why are you talking to them? And why are you asking them questions? And get lost. And it happened to be the guardian that had been appointed by the court. And she said to her, you better respect me because I have the power to take your children away. And that's exactly what she did by her recommendation.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was her first entree into but this is everybody's entree. Usually you cater, you kiss I won't say the swear word because and that was, you know, what I tell people, you gotta kiss because, you know, you just have to toe the line and convince this person that you're a good person. And you know, even then it doesn't work because they have so much.
It becomes a kind of a song and dance. The parent has to kind of do this. The parent is pushed into a position of doing a performance for a social worker to convince them that they're a worthy parent who it's like a job interview, if you will. Otherwise, that individual, that socialist Hildegard has the power to take children out of the home and drop them into another home environment. And it just seems to be a lot. Well, I don't know what to say, but what a debilitating experience for children and parents to go through. And the shame involved in that is going to last a lot, you know, a long time. Is this a way of breaking up families or getting people on the road to healing?
It's administrative, and we have no liberties once and we've forfeited them really by even I'll have people come in and they'll be all disgruntled about some court order, and I'll say to them, well, who actually served who? And I served them because of this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, well, once you serve somebody, you're in the court system too, and it's hard to get out. So you just have to not go there unless it's serious abuse. And if it's serious abuse, it's probably more of a criminal matter. There's another thing I want to bring up too, as we talk about best interests of the children, and it occurred to me, and I actually wrote a brief on this. So let's say, Wes, you're the best interviewer, right? Wes is the best interviewer. I'm the best attorney. The best is like, it's the opposite of the worst, right? So it occurred to me, and this was during the last campaign, we should just be calling it interests of the children. If we we qualify things, like we call an error, oh, a harmless error rather than a harmful error. And we don't even use the opposite term. We just, in criminal law, they can walk all over you, and the courts can just rule that it's a harmless error. Well, we're ruling on best interests of the children instead of what are the interests of these children at this current time. Anybody can have their narrative about what's best. So we're actually, courts, what they're doing is not discerning facts, disputed facts, which, but they're discerning, they're there to they're discerning issues. Like I'd start to get these orders, and we're going to trial on a custody issue, on a maintenance issue, on a child support issue. It's never, it can't even be an issue whether you want the divorce or not. That I start to have people say, I said, yeah, you can argue that there's not irreconcilable differences. So how do you litigate an issue? That's why I said if the issue was social workers and whether they're good or bad, generally, how do you litigate an issue? It's just a lot of story. It's one stories, and it's what I call a vicious circle. Anybody can have a story about what's best for the children, and any family member could come in and say, I think this is what's best, and then you have a judge just determining what's best. And they are not, our system is not capable. It's an administrative system. They're capable of administering, but they're not capable. And what they do is subject all families, and I submit to you, any court order related to your children or how much money you have to pay is an injunction. You need to do this, or you need to do that, or else. And these orders, these people are subject to contempt, and contempt has now become, you go to jail.
So I'm listening to all this, and then I'm sort of metaphorically looking around at Minnesota, and I am making the connection that not a lot of people are getting married. I mean, there's these new family structures and situations where people simply say, you know what, I can make more money being married to Tim Walls's state. I can make more money being married to the mayor's government or the county program. I'll cohabitate with a series of partners, and cohabitation, in that sense is also, cohabitation also becomes unreliable because individuals realize if this person's living with me for more than 6 months, they become a common law spouse in Minnesota, and then they have a right to half my junk. I'm thinking that all of this is creating incredible instability in our I mean, in a real world sense, instability in our schools. There's no more places of worship. We're still under lockdown, but to have people living in communal situations now with the low income housing that's going on, it's just, it's a melting pot for chaos. Instead of,
I don't know about that. It might be a melting pot for freedom, because and I gotta wrap this up in a few minutes.
Okay.
But the origin of the marriage license that you talked about, going down to the courthouse, paying money to get a marriage license, is that came from when they didn't want blacks to marry whites, so you had to have a license to marry, and I guess you had to prove, and even now you have to prove, you take blood tests and all that kind of stuff in order to get married. But I used to see it that way. I used to see, oh my gosh, my friends aren't married, they've been together for 30 years, they must not be committed, right? But there is a value to having a commitment versus a commitment, a covenant, versus something that you're just doing because everybody expects you to have that type of a wedding. And do you know, priests and pastors have been subject to criminal penalties for marrying people without a license. So think about that. Think about that abuse that you can't even have. And I know gay people, because I've been involved in them, you would have before they could marry, would have a contract, and they would have a ceremony. And I guess they didn't think that was good enough. And because our state says, well, you're not really married unless you have a marriage license and you actually have somebody. What is that? What is that? So we're again in the minutia, the bureaucracy of a thinking that, like you say, oh, it's just going to be wild if we don't have all these orders or these licenses, those kinds of things. I beg to differ, so my story's a little different there, but I can see how people think that way. I even had a relative of mine saying, oh, if we didn't have the courts, everything, everybody would be committing crimes. And I'm like, don't we have, I think 99% of us are pretty darn good people that will help others. We've seen that even with COVID. But they've prevented us from doing that because we can't be together. But be that as it may, with disasters, how much people want to help. I had in one of my neighborhoods where I lived, we had like a hurricane, and everybody came. It was like the end of the world for the neighborhood, and everybody came out and helped people build their houses and clean their yards. And I don't think we're bad people. I think that if we didn't have, I mean, we need government for certain things, but we don't need government to the extent of their involvement in our lives, and in particular our family life. So I can close on that.
Well, that's terrific, and that's a good place to close. I think it says that positively where we agree is that we need a safe environment for kids, and we need to have communities so that people, neighbors, are helping each other. And let's mention again that the book is Sandra, Grazzini-Rucki, and the World's Last Custody Trial, heavy-hitting material by Michelle MacDonald. And you can get it for free from Kindle. It's a free download if you are with Kindle Unlimited. So if you are a subscriber to Kindle, you can get it. Otherwise, you have to pay a couple bucks. But you're also able to download it on Amazon.com in other formats. So look for that, please. And Michelle MacDonald, thank you very much today for your help and in sharing this information. And hey, let's all be good to each other, right? Let's just try to be the best people we can be and get through this. And if there's a parting of ways at some point, you might need to just walk away from something. Everybody be cool and be nice to each other. We'll get through this somehow. And peace to everybody. Thank you, Michelle.
Peace. Thank you. Thank you, Wes, for all that you do in getting this material out there. And again, we need to operate in love and not fear, right? That's,
right.
We have instincts, but we can't. Most of what's happening right now is it's a lot of unreasonable fear that's being imposed upon us by our government. So we're 99% of us are good people, and wanna, and there's a lot of love out there.
And that's so true. And with this unlimited lockdown since last March, people are exhibiting their personal quirks in public in all kinds of strange ways. And, the COVID Karens and COVID Kims are amongst us. And we just have to try to get over this a little bit and start exhibiting some kindness, because we're in some strange days. Thank you, Michelle. And
thank you, Wes.
We'll be looking forward to hosting you March 1st. We need to set something up on March 1st, which is the anniversary of Michelle's group, her nonprofit called FamilyInnocence. It's
Mhm.
spelled the way it sounds, familyinnocence.com. So please check it out, look it up online, and see you soon again, Michelle. Thanks. It's been great fun. Good intellectual conversation. So lacking these days.
Thank you, Wes. You're the best interviewer. How's that?
Oh, thank you.
All
See
right.
you next time.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.